Hello again, everybody. I'm Phil Liggett, and I hope you're enjoying our ongoing coverage of the Tour de France here on SBS. It's true, today the riders in the Tour de France are taking a well-earned rest day. But of course, the Tour riders don't take a day off the bicycles. They're afraid their legs will tighten up. They go cycling. Well, I can tell you, here in Andorra, there is no flat road to be had, so they're always going to climb away from the city. We're in the heart of the Pyrenees, where the riders arrived yesterday. But we're going to take advantage now of this rest day programme to look back over the second week of the Tour de France. It was a journey that began with a time trial, went into the Alps, and then came into the heat of the south before the riders reached here yesterday in the Pyrenees. We're going back to the very start of the week and the time trial at Lac de Madine. And so Indurain now chasing Bunyo because he's moved on to the top of the leaderboard at this 28-kilometre check. As he comes up towards the line now, he's going to register the best time without a shadow of a doubt. And watch for the line on the road now as he cuts through the crowd here. They've all spotted it's Big Mig. Driving at full speed up towards that line now, and it's going to be very quick indeed. 34 minutes 26 seconds, a minute 12 now better than the best time there so far. And now the arrival of Miguel Indurain, and in fact he has caught 4 riders during the ride today, and the last one of them just a few moments ago was Britain's Sean Yates, and he's now coming in ahead of those 4 men. And just look at the clock, he's going to be well inside 1 hour 13 minutes, and Gianni Bunyo is the time he's aiming at 1:15. So Miguel Indurain again is going to win a time trial of the Tour de France, although there are still some big names in the race to come home. Indurain sprints for the line now. His time is going to be 1 hour 12 minutes and 50 seconds. Without doubt the best time, and no one is going to beat that. After the time trial had brought to an end the opening 1,500 kilometres, the race moved to the Alps with Miguel Indurain an imposing leader. When stage 10 dawned last Wednesday, the scenery had changed to high peaks. A chance for the climbers to try and break Indurain's grip during the 203 kilometres from Villard de Lans to Serre Chevalier. The Col de Glandon at 1,951 metres was the first challenge, followed by the Col de Telegraph at 1,566 metres. And this lifted the riders one notch higher onto the Col de Galibier, a giant at 2,645 metres. On the Glandon, the Italian Stefano Colliger had taken a lone lead, but it was short-lived, and the field caught up before the Col de Telegraph, where Thierry Claverola was leading a group that was trying to slip the big names in the race. The real selection came on the Galibier itself, and among the missing, Gianni Bunyo, Eric Breukink, Claudio Chiappucci and Stephen Roach, as 3 riders battled it out on the last of the day's mountains. And as Indurain sprints for the summit, he is over 4 minutes ahead now of Alex Zula. And that's official, and Zula losing 3 minutes in the time trial, 4 minutes at the moment today, which makes 7 in 2 days of racing in the Tour. Well, this is a marvellous crowd, and they say it's going to be 10 times as thick tomorrow when we go to Isola with all the famous climbs, the Col d'Izoard, Col de Var, as well on the route. And Indurain's rhythm now is just keeping 2 riders up with him, Rominger and Mechia.
And it looks as if Hampson has got dropped off the back there. Indurain just putting the pressure on as they come up to the top of the climb. What a ride he's doing today. And Rominger always keen to go through, always keen to work, because he thinks now that he can move right up the overall classification tonight. Rominger goes over in first place. Indurain quite easily in second. Mechia in third. Now we have to see just how far behind those other 2 riders are.
It was all downhill to the finish after that, and in Serre Chevalier, the 3 survived to sprint it out.
Which will be a strange sprint when they come down to the finish line here. It is a little bit dangerous, and I'm sure the riders don't know it, although they do get to look at the race book every night. There is a very dangerous corner with about 75 metres to go, so it is a strange sprint to judge. If they know it quite well, then the best thing to do is for a rider to lean out here. To take note, really, Mechia has been at the back of this group for the last 10 kilometres. Both Indurain and Rominger have been doing the work, but in theory, those 2 riders are the strongest for the finish.
So into the last kilometre for the 3 leaders, and they're now leaving Indurain out in front to try and outmaneuver him for the first prize. The first prize, the same every day in the mountain stages, £5,200 for the first man over the line. The overall prize in the Tour de France, £225,000. That's approximate on the conversion rate of 200,000 French francs. And now Indurain still leading them towards the line. The man in yellow that beat them all in the time trial. He smashed them out of sight today by similar time gaps over the first mountain stages of the Tour this year. And he's trying desperately to ride them off, but Rominger is thinking about it now as he looks to see where Mecchia. This is the corner. Very difficult one as they take it, and they take it wide indeed. Come back into our picture. They're all still upright. Then there's another one, and then they will see the finishing line, see how tight it is. And Rominger is going to take his first stage victory in the Tour de France from Mecchia and Indurain. They'll all come in the same time.
But despite that win by Rominger, Indurain had all but doubled his lead overall. Mecchia was back up to second place as he was before the time trial, and Zenon Jaskula a refreshing surprise in third. Other big names had suffered terribly. On Thursday, the second and last day in the Alps, was to be a watershed for some big names. They faced a cruel crossing of the Giants, beginning with the Col d'Isola at 2,360 metres. Then it was on to the Col de Var, 2,109, a descent and up the highest pass in Europe, the Col de la Bonnette at 2,802 metres. Finally, the race ended after the steep climb to the finish at Isola 2,000. On the Isola, Claudio Chiappucci seemed to have recovered well and was in great form when he sprinted clear to win the climb ahead of Rominger and the Italian David Cassani. By the time the race was on to the Col de Var, Cassani had broken away alone to try and increase his lead in the King of the Mountains competition. He was really a fragile leader of that. By the top, he was over a minute ahead, but soon he would be caught. The race pattern changed as the Col de la Bonnette started and Scotland's Robert Miller began to move clear. At first he was with Pedro Delgado, and then he went forward alone.
And here's Miller now, dancing his way to the summit. His name will go down in history alongside Baramontes. It's only the third time the Tour de France has come over this mountain. And really, on a day like this, people were asking the question, was it too cruel to add this one in as well? Because don't forget, there's still another very, very steep climb to come up to Isola 2000. Miller's face now tells us the story of a long hour in the saddle on this climb alone. Never mind what's still to come and what's gone behind him.
Looking down the straight there, it looks as if Miller has actually increased his lead. When he gets to the top here, it'll give us a good chance to get a time check on his progress.
Well, he'll be inspired, which the same can't be said by riders now trailing this race by many, many minutes when they arrive up here. But Miller knows he's riding to be first man over the top, and a long, long descent to follow with the big gears in use. But it is a very dangerous descent, and Miller must be careful indeed on the way down. There are no protective barriers at all on the way off this mountain, and it's a long way down if you don't stick on the road. The last few metres to the summit for Robert Miller, who in the past has won stages in the Tour de France in the Pyrenees. He's known the disappointments too, but he wanted a great Tour de France this year. He came here for stage wins. He's making his bid now, but he's still a long way to go to hang on as he comes over the top of the Col de la Bonnette. The first man over the top, Robert Miller of Scotland.
Miller led over the top by 75 seconds, but on the last climb he was caught. Approaching the top, Miller tried again to lead the leaders of the Tour de France, but in the end he had to concede, and the reason, Indurain himself hunted him down. As the finish line approached, Indurain, Rominger and Mecchia were again in for the kill, along this time with Chiappucci and the consistent Zenon Jaskula.
So Indurain now dragging away the rest of this group as they approach corner number 30. And that will be the corner of Pedro Delgado, the winner of the Tour de France in 1988. And then at number 31, it passes on to Miguel Indurain.
Indurain is setting such a pace here. It's a wonder who will be the next to attack. Does Claudio Chiappucci have anything left? I'm not sure. Zenon Jaskula is moving up just to try and keep in contention there, but somebody in the next 300 or 400 meters will try again. I feel sure it may well be the little Colombian Alvaro Mejia, but Indurain is definitely the master of this break now.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more, Paul, as he comes up to the corner of his teammate, Pedro Delgado, the winner of the Tour de France in 1988, but Delgado up with the leaders on the climb of the Col de la Bonnette has been dropped now. I'm afraid The moment of truth comes as you grow older in the Tour de France. Now it is the turn of Miguel Indurain to be the master of this marvellous contest, which he has been for the last 2 years, and not making any mistakes this time out either. He's now got the race in the lead, as he had yesterday, as we approach Serre Chevalier. And there's Yaskula has gone. He's gone on the outside through the crowd. He's sat at the back for miles and miles and miles. And they're saying, well, of all the men who's going to win, it's not going to be you, because Romiger's gone straight after him. And Romiger's caught him and dropped him. Indurain's after Romiger. These riders are racing themselves into destruction, I think, in this year's Tour de France. They will not give up. And we've still got the high climbs of the Pyrenees to follow in a few days. Romiger looks over his shoulder. He will see the sun reflecting off the yellow of Miguel Indurain, and he will not be thinking pleasant thoughts. Indurain is right there. He's not made a mistake at all. He's watched only the men he's been concerned with. And Romiger today, because of the absence in this leading group of Eric Breukink, will now be up to 4th place at least overall. I don't think he'll distance Yaskula enough to go any higher than that. And he looks across at Miguel, then he looks round the other way to see if anybody else has had the strength to answer what he thought was the killer blow. And so it looks now as though Indurain could well be taking out this stage in the Tour de France. Sorry about the little bit of picture breakup, as ever in the high mountains. A little bit of problem with the links to our helicopters. And now you can see the crowd, and yes, maybe Isola 2000 will become the new shrine of cycling in the Alps to replace Alpe d'Huez. 400 metres to go, and when they get to the 300-metre mark, it'll be right hands to the gear levers, top gear, and sprint for the line. There's only 2 left today. Mechia isn't here now, and Indurain isn't in the lead. He has the advantage in 2nd place. Our camera looks down to the other riders, but they're out of it. Now, this is all it to measure the crucial last couple of 100 metres, and Indurain goes on the inside, gets the inside now, 100 metres to go. The champion of the Tour de France takes on Tony Romiger, and he loses it.
Romiger's 2nd win in the Alps gave him deservedly the lead in the King of the Mountains competition. And the race said au revoir to former Tour winner Laurent Fignon. First week leader also went Wilfred Nellison, who finished exhausted in the ambulance. And the Italian who promised so much in the opening week, Mario Cipollini, eliminated as he finished outside of the time limit. In all, 15 riders had given up the Tour de France. Overall, the time differences continued to grow. Indurain had added a few more seconds over Mechia. Romiger was up to 4th now, and only 23 riders remained within 30 minutes of Miguel Indurain.
Well, all in all, Miguel Indurain had a lot to celebrate as he sliced into his 29th birthday cake last Friday. Another year has passed, and the situation this July bears an uncanny resemblance to that of 12 months ago. Indurain's already won the Giro d'Italia again, and once more he's exerting a steely Spanish grip on the Tour de France as well. The biggest change for the Big Mig, in fact, is young Marissa, who he recently married in his hometown of Villard near Pamplona. Ever a man of few words, Miguel recently told us that marriage hasn't changed him, and he's certainly giving his legions of fans as much to cheer about as ever. So how does he manage it? Well, Miguel's phenomenal leg power starts with his extraordinary heart. Just 28 beats per minute at rest, but 200 beats per minute at peak level, enough to kill an unfit man. Then there's his lungs with their 8-litre capacity, so large in fact that they push his belly out over his waistband, which is certainly an excuse worth remembering. All of this in a 6'3" frame, one of the biggest in the peloton. So how can a cycling machine like Miguel be beaten?
I don't know. I've never really thought about it. In the time trial, it would be very difficult because I'm very strong. The only place really is in the mountains. That's where the best opportunities would be.
With 6 straight wins in Tour de France time trials, Indurain's dominance in that event is very clear. He's conquered the first mountain challenge in the Alps surprisingly well, but there are 3 more days of climbing to go. And with King of the Mountains Tony Romiger not far behind, the race isn't over yet.
And while we're enjoying a look back at the last week of the Tour de France, don't forget, well, we're receiving plenty of entries for the competition, but there's still room for yours, so come on, get it in right now. Let's rejoin now the race. We're looking back at the Tour de France over its 2nd full week. With the Alps behind them, Miguel Indurain had plenty of time to celebrate his 29th birthday, a cake at the start, and then
a gentle ride from Isola towards Marseille. Not so, though, for the Italian Fabio Roscioli, who scored his first professional win by many minutes.
And here's a happy man. The effort's coming all too easy now, despite all of the time he's been fighting for those few minutes that have gradually grown and grown and grown. And in fact, the latest time check coming in, the main field are 23 minutes behind him. But now it's the moment of Italy's Fabio Roscioli. A richly deserved victory today on the longest stage of the Tour de France. 7.5 hours for him, even 20 minutes further than that for the main field and Miguel Indurain. But when you're an hour and 19 minutes behind, Indurain won't worry too much about this victory, but it will go down in the great memory bank of Fabio Roscioli. He's never before won a stage of the Tour de France, and now in Marseille, he will join a very, very elite list of winners over the years the Tour de France has come here. It's a long, long ride to the line, but I suspect that the two-arm salute is about due. And thank you, everybody, and there it is. Fabio Roscioli, a great stage winner of the Tour de France today.
Overall, though, there was no change on a quiet day in the Tour. The race continued to swelter in the hot sun of the south, and on the 13th stage from Marseille to Montpellier, the field stayed mainly together. With one rider, Neil Stevens, one of only 2 Australians in the race, feeling sick, was tailed off by the bunch and decided to call it a day. For him, his Tour de France was over.
Steve, what's the matter? You just feeling a bit dizzy and sick?
No, it's been to be on all night.
Yeah.
In the end, the sprinters had their say as it came down to the final meters.
And the judo bolts, I think, starting out, and Olaf Ludwig is on his wheel. Ludwig now lining up, the former green jersey winner of the Tour de France. The green jersey is there too of Chevalier Abdul-Japarov. Abdul-Japarov is in 3rd place now as the riders start to fan out all over the road. Abdul-Japarov goes on the left. Ludwig comes through. Abdul-Japarov still has Ludwig's wheel now. And on the line, Ludwig is going to take it.
The first stage win then for the German telecom team, and Ludwig showing himself to be still a challenger for the green jersey. Sunday's stage, another hot one, was 224 kilometres from Montpellier to Perpignan, near the Spanish border. A break of 5 riders went clear after only 32 kilometres, and the race never saw them again until the finish.
None of the riders in this league group of 5 today has ever experienced the joy of winning a stage of the Tour, so they all want it. 1 kilometre to go for the 3 chasers, so it's about 800 metres to go for the 2 in the lead. Lino has the lead at the moment. That's not where he wants to be. He would like Perini in front of him, and he'll probably ride close to the barrier soon and force an attack from Perini on one side of him only, as he wanders all over the place here. He wants to wait, and he doesn't know whether he should or not.
It's beginning to look like a track finish now as Lino keeps standing up, sitting down on those pedals, looking around. The gap actually at the red flag was 8 seconds. As they come up to the 400 or 500 metres to go, you can see the 3 chasers behind, but they're going through the same scenario.
It's amazing because they have a teammate of Perini back there who won't work either. They're trying to bring him through, and they're throwing away a chance of a victory here as we look to the 3 of Chiesa's on the right. Now back to the leaders. They've come almost to a standstill today. 5.5 hours in the saddle. Lino has committed himself to lead out Perini. This is for France. As we see the flags of Catalonia waving, Pascal Lino searching for the first stage victory for France, and Perini is going to take him on. Giancarlo Perini is coming. They're neck and neck to the line, and my goodness me, I don't know which one won. It was either Lino or Perini, but that will go to the photo. And so on the line, you can see it's Pascal Lino who's taken it. Lino gets the first stage victory for France, and Perini will have to be content with 2nd place by a 1/4 of a wheel.
So at last a win for France, and overall, though, no change at all. Miguel Indurain, as with the Alps, was now ready to address the next mountains, the Pyrenees, in yellow. So to yesterday, in the opening day in the Pyrenees, Miguel Indurain was going as near as possible now to his native Spain, and Andorra was providing a steep mountaintop finish. Olivier Rincon was the fugitive after leading for almost 200 kilometres. The main field was much smaller now as they tried to catch him on the finish approach.
7 hours and 20 minutes in the Pyrenees today, most of them uphill. This rider was in the lead for about 6 hours on his own, I think. Up goes the jersey, and now a victory for Oliveira Rincon of Colombia today. He gets the victory, and he deserves it enormously for a marvellous attack. He went clear in the end on the penultimate climb, and he held on to the finish while they swept up everybody else that followed him. Now, Indurain is again leading as the little man, Claudio Chiappucci, moves up on his inside. Watch out, Miguel, he's not going to wait for you. Claudio Chiappucci puts in the attack. Indurain tries to take his wheel and does. Rominger into third place, Mejia fourth. Then Bjorn Ries comes up in fifth. Jaskula is sixth. Martani is seventh.
Well, that was a superb little move by Claudio Chiappucci, and another move by Tony Rominger going down the left-hand side. But you see straight away, Miguel Indurain manages to respond. And the man who seems to me who's going to be very dangerous in the next few days, Alvaro Mejia, responds every time to the attacks of these two riders. And I'm sure when we come to the next two Pyrenean stages, he'll be a man to watch for something special.
Well, Chiappucci always looks as though he's struggling, but he's hanging on in there, and he's going to have another go. He moves up on the right. These are the stars of this year's Tour de France. We're looking down now on the men who have captured the leading positions overall, and this is why they climb the mountains so well. If only Chiappucci could ride the time trial, he'd have won this Tour de France. Now the attack by Bjorn Ries. Look at this. Well, this is the find of this year's Tour de France. Up goes the gear as Bjorn Ries goes for home. He's being chased by Rominger, who feels the mountains are his this year. Rominger drops it up a gear, and as they come round, it looks as though Rominger might well come up Bjorn Ries's wheel, but I don't know. Bjorn Ries is looking across at him. No, he's beaten Ries. Rominger will get second place today. And in third place is the Danish rider Bjorn Ries. Fourth, I think, is Jaskula. And fifth will be Indurain. And sixth, Mejia.
And Rincon's stage win for Colombia was the country's first win in the Tour de France for 5 years. In fact, since Fabio Parra won at Morzine. Less happy, though, was the German Olaf Ludwig, the stage winner at Montpellier on Saturday. The first sighting of the Pyrenees for him, and he retired from the race. This first day in the second mountain chain, though, had worked out well for Indurain. He brought the race to its rest day with no change overall at all. Alvaro Mejia still looking for 3 minutes 23 seconds. Jaskula third, Rominger fourth, and Bjorn Ries of Denmark in fifth place. Andy Hampson lost time yesterday but kept his sixth place overall. Claudio Chiappucci closed in seventh. Stephen Roach is 18th, Robert Miller 29th, and Sean Yates 81st. And just a few minutes ago, Sean Yates was told the Motorola team would continue sponsorship for one more season. That's great news for Sean Yates. It means now he'll be in the Tour de France next year when the race goes into England and goes across the county in which Sean Yates lives in Sussex. The overall situation in the other competitions, King of the Mountains, led by Tony Rominger, ahead of Rincon and Indurain. In the green jersey competition, Abdou Japarov is leading ahead of Jalabert and Chiandri. So although Indurain remains in yellow, this really is a most intriguing race. And you know, there's still so many tough stages to come. He could still lose that overall lead. Tomorrow the race leaves Andorra over a very tough route indeed, finishing on the climb of the Pla d'Adet in Saint-Lary-Soulan. That's on the French side of the Pyrenees. Now, we haven't been there for the best part of 20 years. I hate to admit it, but I was there the last time we went up this mountain. On those occasions, I was calling the big names like Joop Zoetemelk of Holland, Eddy Merckx of Belgium, and Raymond Poulidor. Tomorrow, I hope, we're calling the great names of this year's Tour de France. Until we meet again tomorrow on the mountains, from Alan Piper and me, Phil Liggett.